Hey guys, it's me Robin, RsIslandCrafts. After showing off my hexagon ornament the other day, I had a request to show how I made it, how I took a circle and turned it into a hexagon. So that's what we're going to work on today. I've only done this a few times prior to this, and it was just all willy-nilly. I just grabbed whatever circle I wanted and turned it into a hexagon and then used it just for a tote bag or something. After doing a little research, there's not like an actual formula, but the basic idea is if you start with a 4-inch circle, you will end up with a 2-inch hexagon. But here's the thing though, measuring the circle is fine. You just put your ruler across the center, it's 4 inches. But measuring hexagons is a little bit differently. When you measure a hexagon is measured on the side. It's not measured point to point, it is measured just for one side. So these hexagons, if you were to say I made a 1-inch hexagon, this is the size it would be. One of these sides would measure 1 inches. But when we take our 4-inch circle, we end up with a 2-inch hexagon, and the way they're measuring it is from point to point. So if you're looking for a specific size, if you want a 1-inch hexagon, instead of just this side, you have to measure and see exactly how wide it is, and then double that number to cut your circle. Now, since we're not making these into a grandmother's flower garden and turning them into a quilt, we're just going to use them for either an ornament or applique onto a tote bag or a block. Perfection, it doesn't have to be exact. So these are 4-inch circles, and when I made them, they turned into these 2-inch hexagons. I'll probably go ahead and stitch these all together like in the wreath ornament, but they will probably go onto a tote bag or a little snap pouch or zipper pouch or something. I really don't think I'll be making a Halloween wreath for that. So Halloween's out of the way. Go away, Halloween. You're not here yet, but we're already kicking you to the curb. I went ahead and I cut out several circles, and these circles are 3 inches. I went ahead and used my Olfa circle rotary cutter, that's a tongue twister, to cut out my circles, but you can use anything you have around the house. Go ahead and just take a ruler, a regular ruler, and measure things. If you want to have something tiny like this, remember this one only measures 1.5 inches because I started from a 3-inch circle. Or if you want something larger, this size is a good wreath size. Start with a 4-inch and end up with what they're calling a 2-inch. Just take your ruler around the house, check out a mason jar lid, a cereal bowl, a mayonnaise lid, a small plate that you use for your coffee. You'd be really surprised at how many circle things you have in different sizes in your kitchen. And if you have nothing in your kitchen that's going to work, just Google 3-inch circle on Google, online, and there's usually a coloring book or a drawing or something that you can just go ahead and print out. Okay, the first thing we need to do is, after we cut out our circle, is we're going to fold it in half and finger press it one way, and then fold it in half and finger press it the opposite way. What we're trying to do is we're trying to find our center point. Now when I made these, I used red thread, because you're going to make one little tiny stitch that's going to show up depending on what you call the front or the back. We're going to call this side the front, this is the side we're going to work from. So you have one little stitch on the back. So you want to match your thread to whatever color your fabric is. But to make it easier to see, I'm going to use this light orange thread. And you can see how that stitch just shows up just a little bit. Now if you know you're just going to hang it in a wreath and hang it on the wall, your backside is not going to matter. So it won't really matter if you just have a thread that shows. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to try, this thread will show because it's contrasting, but normally I would go ahead and make them just so it matches, so it makes it nicer. You're going to take a teeny tiny stitch in the center of your circle, just a few threads. I have a knot on the end of my thread, and I have a pretty sharp needle. I lied, I don't have a knot on the end of my thread. And look, we're going to learn how to make a quilter's knot today. Okay, so you take the end of your thread, and you take your needle, and you hold it this way, And you take this and wrap it around your needle. 1, 2, 3. You're going to hold that where you wrapped your thread and pull your needle through. And then you'll have a teeny tiny knot. Okay, let's try that again. In the center, just one little itty bitty stitch. Then what we're going to do, I drew lines on mine just so we can see it because it's hard to see the fold lines on a video. About 1/8 of an inch from the end, along one of those fold lines, you're just going to go and put your needle all the way through. If you go too close to the edge, when you pull your needle, you're just going to pull the threads of fabric out and it won't work. So you just pull that down to the center. Then we're going to take this part and we're going to crease this fold here. Then we're going to take our needle and put it up into this fold, up to what I'm going to call a corner. So once again, you're about 1/8 inch from the edge. And you're going to also pull that one to the center. Now you just want to try to get them close to the center so that your sides are relatively similar in size and length. Back into the corner. Pull it down, go slow because this piece always likes to get tangled somewhere, and bring it to the center. Now, you just need to be careful. You're not going way over here or way over here. So you're just going to have them all meet in the center. Almost. One more. Well, one more after this one. Okay, now your last one, it gets this funky little bit here, so you just kind of move this part to the center. You want to make sure that this section right here isn't coming over your edge because that's going to show when you pull it over. Just make sure you're still in the center. The two parts of the arcs of the circle come together, and you can just go through all 3 sections of fabric there. And that's it. To finish it off, if you were going to put a button on it, if you're going to use it this way, you're probably going to want to put something over the center of it to hide all those rough edges. So like on this one, I chose a button. You could put a bead. You could make, you could put a yo-yo on there or a little pom-pom. I would want to add something to cover this up before I cut my thread. But for now, we're just going to tie this one off. And all I did was I took my needle and I went under this fold, grabbed a couple of these layers, and came back up. And then I take my needle and I go through that loop and pull it tight, and it ties it off. Now I like to tie all mine off before I added the button, just so I know that this is secure and none of my sections will move while I'm trying to add something onto the center. If you were just going to lay this over on the other side, you could just go ahead and clip the thread. I don't know what I'm going to do with these. They're just going to end up going into the scrap stash. So what I do is I just go underneath this little flap and I come out on the edge in the fold. I try to come out a little bit towards the back. Just pull my needle through. Now if you give your thread a little pull, your hexagon will scrunch up a little bit. And then just clip your thread. And when you let go, the thread will just pop back in. You see how you can see the contrast thread right there? And then there's one that I did with red. Alright, so let's try that again. We'll do it on the candy cane fabric with a white thread. I fold it in half. Half again. Take a tiny bite out of the center. Pull it to the knot on the thread there. And then just start pulling your edges in. This is a really easy project to do, and it's good for while you're watching movies, sitting on the couch with the family. You can get a lot done in a short amount of time. You could make a grandmother's flower garden with these. I kind of prefer the traditional EPP way. Let me show you what that looks like. This is a 1-inch hexie. I use freezer paper on the back, and I will be doing a video about how I do this later. But this is the hexies that I use when I do English paper piecing. I like the sturdiness of the freezer paper in there, where this is just poofy fabric. Even after you iron it down, these, I ironed all of these and they're still a little bit poofy. I like the stability of the paper inside here, so when I'm stitching the edges together, it's a little firmer. But you could easily do this. These would be great for appliquing the little rings and circles down for the hexies, the flowers, on a quilt or a tote bag. But I don't think I'd want to do 1,000 of them in this format. I'd rather stick to the traditional way. It's going to take a long time to make them, and I don't know, it just like I said, it just feels sturdier to me. But this way works perfectly fine too. So it's whatever works for you. Okay, then we're going to secure it. Let's go into one of these little folds and flaps here. Grab a couple of those other layers of fabric. Come back through the top. 1 stitch. 2 stitch. Sometimes I'll go through this circle twice. Make sure it's nice and secure. Nice and tight. Back under the fold, through the edge, bury the thread. Give it a little tug, snip it off, and there you go. See how this one, I don't know, this one looks just a little bit off for me. Like I didn't get all my edges perfectly into the center. Let's see. You see if I match up these edges here? This guy's just a little bit off. But that's okay because I can ease that in when I'm stitching the wreath together. And if I just want to machine stitch these down onto a piece of fabric and just stitch around it, it'll be fine. But see, that's one of the reasons why I prefer to do the standard EPP, English paper piecing, for the hexies, because I know every single hexie I make is going to be exactly the same size. So if you guys have any other questions, or if you have any other suggestions for videos that you'd like to see, just go ahead and leave me a comment down below, and I'll add it to my growing list. I'll see you next week. Bye!